You guys are here. My name is Jason Murphy. This is Rebel Dharma, Wednesday night. Glad you guys are here. Those of you online, our screen is not functioning properly, so you can see the crowd in the room, but they can't see you. Um, just to say hi. Yeah, I guess you can. Oh, you can see them here. Oops, having some technical issues today. Wait a minute. Spotlight for everyone, that's the problem. Excuse me one second. I'm clearly having some issues. I don't know what's happening. I have to remove spotlight. Here we go. There. Now you guys can at least see there. We'll edit all this stuff out later, post production. There we go. All right. So here we are, and yeah, so this group meets weekly, and we've been moving through some aspects of the Eightfold Path. That we'll sit for 30 minutes or so, and then so there'll be a guided meditation, and then some discussion, and depending on whether there's Q&A or not, or to the amount of Q&A that there is, I often have a topic along the kind of Buddhist psychology realm, this kind of mix of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy or Buddhist psychology. So that's kind of the emphasis and focus on what we do here. So is there anyone either online or in the room that wishes to introduce themselves? You can just unmute yourself if you're online.
I'll introduce myself.
Great.
First time here. My name's Jenny.
Hey, Jenny.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. And are you a meditator? Have you meditated before? Do you do the meditation?
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
What about anyone online? No? All right. Being shy? Well, you're welcome anyway. All of
Thank you. I'm Carbon, and I was a meditator for a long time, and have long been out of the practice, and appreciate being with people who can guide me to do it again. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And where are you located?
I am in Idaho Falls.
All right. Idaho Falls. Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Anyone else online that wants to introduce themselves? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So there's a bit of a theme in the meditation this evening that may lead into the talk, and I mean, what I've kind of prepared versus the Q&A. But this is a inquiry practice that I'm gonna lead us off with some kind of general breath, body awareness, kind of present time experience, and then I'm going to invite reflection, a question, just and that would be something. The way that I view it is it's different than kind of metta or repeated phrase, in the sense of you're not using the focus of the meditation on the phrases repeating, like, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering. We're not using that as the focal point of meditation. We're actually allowing the breath, body, present time experience, vipassana, if you will, experience, and then dropping into that space a question of inquiry. And the question, I may vary it, but it's kind of, who am I? Who am I? So, and then the idea is just to let the mind come up with whatever that might be. and then let it fade away. Hopefully, you can allow it to fade away and come back to breath, body as the anchor or the meditation object, and then invite it in again. So that's the front loading of this experience, and let's go ahead. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. It's helpful if you allow the eyes to close or be downcast. Sitting in a way that allows for the back to be upright but not rigid, for the neck to be elongated. If you feel comfortable allowing the eyes to close, just begin to settle in. Arriving here. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. And as we settle in, allowing the comings and goings of sound to remain in the background of our attention. We're not trying to shut out sound. We're not going to have it be the focus of attention or the object of attention. Instead, aiming the attention towards this experience of breathing. Can be helpful to aim the attention specifically at the nostrils or the upper lip. Or connecting to the experience of breathing around the nostrils, upper lip. Of course, if you can connect to the experience of breathing somewhere else within the body, not a problem. Use that as a place to return to. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. course, knowing that the attention may wander off. It's not a problem. It's just what minds do: think, plan, remember. Whenever the attention wanders off, with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. Collecting the attention with present time experience, establishing mindfulness of breath and body. Thoughts, sounds, sensations, all part of this present time experience. We're not trying to shut any of it out. We're just allowing it to be in the background of attention as we return again and again to this experience of breathing. Breathing in. Know that you're breathing in. Breathing out. Know that you're breathing out. Once mindfulness has been established, perhaps some calm, the invitation for this meditation is to invite in the question, who am I? And if you can, just kind of allowing it to drop from the mind somewhere down into the body. Just see what comes up. Like dropping a pebble into a pool of water. Dropping this question from the mind down into the heart. Who am I? Just as a pebble will create some ripples, so this question might create some ripples of thought, feeling. Just allowing that to happen, coming back to the breath as an anchor. Establishing that mindfulness of breathing and body. And then invite the question again. Who am I? returning to this inquiry again and again. Say 80% attention, breath, body, about 20% on the inquiry question of who am I? Perhaps a way to a different way to kind of bring the question in is more like, am I? Am I this? Am I that? In what ways do we conceive of the I? Am I male? Am I female? Am I tall? So on. Just a slightly different way to bring in this inquiry practice. Or stick with what you're doing. Feel free to let go of the question completely. Just be with experience. There is a teaching from the Buddha. Whatever or however we conceive of I or self or me or mine, we are ever other than that. However we conceive of the I, we are ever other than that. So feel free to stay with this inquiry practice or rest back into this present time experience of breath and body as you like until the bell rings. Okay. So hopefully that landed for you. That was workable. It can be a little challenging because it's kind of two practices blended together. It's both the kind of open vipassana, breath, body, present time awareness, mindfulness building practice, and then the inquiry, which hopefully that that I mean I'm sure something happened. And yeah, so, leading into a conversation, I just wanted to first open up, how was that for people? Any questions in regards to that? I'm going to focus on that topic of anatta or not self um, in a moment, but I just want to hear kind of what it was like for people. So those of you online can raise your hand through the reactions and call on you. Those of you in the room, you can raise your real hand. Yeah, your live hand. Go ahead.
um, well, when you first mentioned the practice that we were going to be asking ourselves, who am I thought of the teaching of no self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the teachings that I've had the hardest time wrapping my head around and really understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But from what my thoughts on it are, it has to do with like interconnectedness
Mm.
and also like dependent co-arising. So we don't exist as something in and of ourselves. We only exist like in terms of the senses, like I can only see, like my sight is not separate from what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And um
Like I hear you, and I also hear
Yeah.
I also hear you talking theoretically,
right.
and I guess the question was, what happened for you? So did you
That's
bring
what I was thinking
did
about.
did you bring that question in? Were you able to drop it into the body, and did you come up with, or when you dropped the question in, you went into this kind of more cerebral kind of conceptual understanding,
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Figure it out.
Thinking about thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, is part of the process, right?
Mhm.
Because we think that our minds are who we are. Okay. Not that you're saying that, but that's just one of the places where we identify. Oh, I am my thoughts. Oh, I am my feelings, or oh, I am my intellect. Right. So all of the things that you're saying, the co-arising and emptiness and interconnected, interdependence, yeah, all ways of saying, like, let's explore what does it mean to be not self or anatta. So I appreciate that. So there was no, like, when you would drop the question in, and this is for all of you, was there any kind of, oh, I'm that, or oh, I'm identifying with this, or oh, I identify with that? Yeah.
I liked it in the two forms of who am I, and then saying I am.
Mm-hmm.
When I first heard the who am I immediately dropped into am I this breath
Mm-hmm.
as I inhaled and felt, all of that sort of body scanning
Mm-hmm.
things that I do,
Mm-hmm.
and then just relating to am I in community? Is this who I am?
Mm-hmm.
That came up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then brought it back into the body and just thought, am I this body
Mm-hmm.
in community? And just sort of got back into sort of trying to simplify things and not get in my head, analyzing it and that sort of thing, because I have that tendency.
Yeah.
And I thought about my intention today of just letting it come in, letting it be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the who am I was sort of a tether to that intention.
Uh-huh.
And I appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody,
All right.
for the experience.
Yeah. What's your name?
I'm Elle.
Elle, nice to meet you. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm Jason, by the way. All right, anyone else online and in person? I'm gonna kind of tease it out a little bit, which hopefully will be useful. Hmm.
Yeah, I like the idea of dropping it in, and I always picture like the old Pepto-Bismol commercials.
All right, plop, plop,
Put it
fizz,
in and it
fizz.
starts fizzing
Yeah,
around in
sure,
there.
sure, yeah.
But I didn't really feel it fizzing, you know,
Mhm,
and I
mhm.
felt almost like it was a trick. It's like, oh, now this is like, am I good? Am I bad? Do I feel good? You know,
Mhm, mhm.
and I realized kind of that it wasn't triggering anything. So that's what it was.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't a trigger for
Uh-huh.
sure, that question, which
Uh-huh.
kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
But you know, and later, and I like what you said about 80-20.
Uh-huh.
That really gave me some like a parameter kind of how to like weigh it. So that was really useful. But then I felt kind of like I started like replaying some bad scenes of my past,
Mhm.
bad behavior that I felt bad about.
Mm.
And I caught myself being like, no, that's not me.
Right. I'm not this.
I'm not this.
Or
I'm thinking about this.
right,
you
right.
know? And then I just kind of felt like ultimately it was like I am this, you know, with like all the body scan stuff that I'm feeling. And then it was just like I am.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
in the present moment and this is it, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, it was actually a lot less triggering than I thought.
That's great. Anyone online? I didn't mean to like cut you off or anything. As I just was kind of wanting, but I did want to intervene in the theoretical because the hope is that when we drop out of the theoretical, what do we then experience as the I? That was the kind of the inquiry. Yeah. Um, because it can seem confusing, you know, this whole concept of not self, right, can seem, you know, very confusing. And so I'm going to break down. So there's a teaching, I call this talk the aggregates of no self or not self, right? And the aggregates, this is a very specific teaching to the Buddha, and it's the way that the Buddha presented this concept of not self. And so I'll kind of start to tease it out a bit. So, original to the Buddha. So, this is one of the areas where all of the teachings of the time, you know, 2,500, ancient India, Hinduism, philosophy, fatalism, all present. Astrology, there was all this, like same with now, like tarot and, you know, magic, and there's all this kind of stuff going on, and people were like, you know, professing this and professing that, and um, you know, there was the Shivites that were, you know, worshiping fire and smoking chillum and, you know, worshiping Shiva, and there were and still are, and there's the Jains that were kind of like so austere that they basically like they only ate air, you know what I mean? Like they were just so they didn't wear clothes, you know, they were so austere, so extreme. And then somewhere along the line, you know, within the Buddha's teaching, within the Buddha's insight, he came to this ultimate understanding of anatta, which is in rebellion to the Hindu philosophy of Atman. So Atman from yogic tradition basically says soul, like it basically means we are a soul that carries on, like that kind of maintains through one's life and carries on beyond life, beyond this life, right? So anatta is saying actually nothing in our existence is unchanging. Everything is changing, including, you know, what makes up this body. That there's no fixed and permanent anything. So to say that there's nothing fixed and permanent in this realm of existence except for this thing called the soul that we don't really know or understand, doesn't make sense. And basically, like, I haven't found it. The Buddha is saying, I haven't found it. So that's kind of where. So this was really the Buddha stepping out against kind of the patriarchal, kind of racist view that Hinduism really had at the time, which is, only the elite and certain folks that was just their fate, their destiny to be, lepers or beggars or, less than, right? Because it was their fate, had something to do with karma. So the Buddha just really kind of rebelled against all of that, which is why I call this group Rebel Dharma, because in the truth, in the understanding of his own insight, his own kind of practice, he came to recognize what was, and continued to teach for many years, and that here we are 2,568 years later, still saying, like, yeah, and what happens when we ponder this question, of who am I? Where's the I, right? So I'm going to kind of dismantle it a little bit. So it's a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding of not self is probably the biggest misunderstanding in our lives. Now, in the beginning of practice, or in the beginning of our life, the I is central. I am going to go to meditate. I am going to, start to read this book, or I am going to go on a meditation retreat. And most of our thoughts, feelings, plans, and intentions, hopes, and dreams are centered around this idea of I, of me, of mine. And we can't help it. It's the way we were conditioned, in one way, nothing can seem more self-evident than the I. We are taught from childhood, this is mine. It's a master idea. I am this, you are that, It's like saying, a master idea is like saying the sky is blue. Now, the sky, most people just believe that the sky is blue, right? Is the sky blue? No, the sky is not blue. The sky is clear, yet the reflection off the ocean creates a blue sky, but it's not actually blue. Same thing is true with the I from the Buddhist perspective. So there's a common description given in most Buddhist circles. And the story kind of goes like, there's a monk, and I actually had a similar experience to this, but I'll just tell the story. There's a monk walking, there's a row of monks walking through the forest early in the morning, going for alms rounds before the sun, just as the sun is coming up, just at dawn. And one young novice monk is walking peacefully, eyes to the ground, and then sees a snake off to the side of the path and gets startled, right? And kind of freaks out and moves away. And then upon further inspection, sees that it's just a stick that was shaped, like a snake. And then immediately calms down and is no longer startled or in a kind of an activated state. What changed? Perception. Absolutely correct. And in some ways, all of Buddhism is pointed towards this idea of, can we have a perception shift? Meditation is about helping us to have a perception shift, right? So we can, if we can see the rope and calm down and not be defended, this is the same thing can be true with the I. If we can realize that there is no I, there is no fixed or permanent self, and we can relax more in the present moment. We can actually live more fully if we're not so concerned about whether we're going to get bit by the snake. So that's the perception shift. So when people ask me all the time about this kind of, the I and the self and not self, and it's the I that's trying to figure out whether it's a self or not. And that's, very perplexing, particularly for the ego, which is generally what we mean when we're saying I. So just a few more kind of examples of this. There's some common misconceptions of what we would call identity view. How tall are you? So you might ask, how tall are you? I am 6 foot. What is 6 foot? The body, right? The body is 6 foot, not thoughts, not feelings. So what is the I? The body? Oh, I am the body. I am this body. What color are your eyes? So these are just questions that we can kind of begin to ask ourselves. What color are our eyes? Well, my eyes are brown. So are you the body, or are you separate from the body, or are you the owner of the body? Who is the I? What mood are you in right now? Moods and emotions rule our lives. So do thoughts rule our lives. Happy, sad, bored. The I is a mind state. Is the I a mind state? I don't know. Feelings, joy, sadness. Mind states? The observer. Oh, the I is the observer. The I that knows, the knower of experience. So I'm not sure if you had this or not, did anyone have this experience where you were kind of, who am I? Oh, I am the observer of experience. It's still an identity to an I. And this is one of the, there's this experience that many people share in meditation, and I've experienced it myself, where at some point when you are with the observer, because we all can do that, this is what makes us human, our ability to perceive our experience. That is what makes us human, which is why being born into the human realm from the Buddhist cosmological perspective is the highest birth. It's considered because it's the one where we have the ability to shift, to have a perception shift, to realize, to self-actualize, to self-realize. So the observer, right? Central behind the I. So there was this kind of search for the I not that long ago, for the self, for the soul. And it's Stanford and Harvard, and actually UCSD was very involved, Duke University, Berkeley. There was a lot of this kind of interest in the last kind of 10, 15 years as neuroscience has become bigger and more kind of, now it's almost over. It's like we're beyond neuroscience now. Okay, we've mapped it all, right? But there was this big push to find the I. All these kind of neuroscientists were trying to find it. And, this goes all the way back to, Western philosophy with Descartes of I am, what is it? I am my thoughts, or my thoughts are who I am. I can't remember the exact quote right now. It'll come to me. But, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Descartes, right? This is, what he's basically, the thoughts are the I, or there is that which creates thoughts, which is the I. So this is one of the reasons why so many neuroscientists and kind of in the science community has wanted to kind of test out this theory. Like, okay, well, where is the I? Where is the part of self? Can you check that out? Thanks, Brian. Just invite them up to meditate if they want. So, a little distracted. So this central to the eye, the observer, right? The Buddha put it in a few different ways. I was saying about so they couldn't find it. There was no, there's like, okay, on the right prefrontal cortex, there is a cluster of neurons that fire up when we think about self and identity. But it's not just there, it's also happening in the back right or back left corner of the brain as well, in the cerebellum, based on kind of memory, short-term and long-term access memory. So there was kind of like, okay, there's not a one place, it's not one area, definitely within the brain. So where's the eye? They couldn't find it. So the Buddha put it this way, and I kind of said this: in whatever way they conceive of a self, the fact is ever other than that. Is it, thought? Is it a fiction? It's useful to have an idea of self. This is how we separate, your house and my house, and so there's the ultimate reality, and then there is the kind of the everyday reality. There's universal, and then there is the applicable, kind of like the applicable understanding of this concept of self. Yeah, we're using these bodies. These bodies are moving through. We have some identity with them. But the Buddhist perspective is to say that there's more going on here than that. And let's not get locked into this is me and mine, because that is attachment. And that is craving. So one of my teachers, Sylvia Bornstein, would say, as long as we believe solidly in an I, we will be afraid of death. As long as we believe solidly in the I, we will be afraid of death. Now, if you think about what's the number one fear most people have is death. And getting older or getting sick, which all leads up to dying. Yet it's inevitable. We all die. No one lasts. Nothing lasts. So it's not about like, oh, grim and like, oh, let's just welcome death. It's about, can we let go of the attachment of I'm going to die? And which, as the Buddha is saying, kind of live in that knowing. Live in the knowing around this. This is one of the central themes found within Buddhism, preparing us to die. And to die, you could say die well, or die unencumbered, which unfortunately isn't always the case. Quite often, working with some folks who have died, who have passed, very encumbered, So when the Buddha saw people, he saw more than just, him or her or they or them. He saw parts of the human experience, and this is what he called the aggregates. So also known as the khandhas. Khandha means actually pile of stuff. So the Buddha really just, which then we retranslate to aggregates. But the term khandhas, which is the way the Buddha described what is happening in this experience, and I'll go through what the khandhas are, is a pile of stuff, right? So me and my friends, we used to call each other piles, right? That was like a joke. It was like, hey, what's up, pile? What's up, pile? And that was like a way of recognizing that we're not who we pretend to be, that there's something more going on. It was our kind of, offbeat way of kind of being secretly Buddhist or something. I don't know. Anyway, so the Buddha used these 5 aggregates, and this is found within the what's called the Visuddhimagga. The Visuddhimagga is a later kind of organization of the early Buddhist teachings. So this idea of the 5 aggregates as a teaching tool of wrong view. So this is all about pointing out the ways in which our perceptions are skewed. This sense of I, this is me and mine. And let's just think about most of the causes of suffering, craving, attachment are what? Related to the I. Related to the I. Or the they, right? I and they, that's that separate sense of self. If I am here and you are there and you've hurt me and I've hurt you, then that's where the aversion or the grasping comes from. Or I love you, but you don't love me, right? Or something like that. You know, the whole concept of I is, like I was talking about last week, there's 3 what are called the kilesas, right? The 3 poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Delusion, from the Buddhist perspective, is what we're talking about here. The delusion that there is a separate sense of self, right? A me, a mine. So this is not an intellectual investigation, and that's where we get caught up, because we think about thinking about thinking. And then in that thinking about thinking, then we over-identify with the me that is thinking, right? And it's a trap. It's a philosophical trap. Kind of like what you were saying. You were like, yeah, I could tell. Like, and you're right. It is a trap. Like this, who am I, is a way, or am I this, or am I that, is a way for us to trick our ego and to be like, oh yeah, well, am I this body? Am I this thought? No, I have 70,000 thoughts a day. Am I all of them? Am I none of them? Am I only the good thoughts, or am I the bad thoughts? Am I the positive emotions, or am I the negative emotions? Am I only the negative emotions? Am I my past? Am I my present? So when we start to kind of try to, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, then we're just collecting. Another one of my teachers, Gil Fronsdale, called it selfing, like basically kind of like the way a snake sheds its skin, that we're packing skins on. We're packing more and more. We're selfing over and over, kind of creating this identity. This is what is called identity view in the Buddhist perspective. And there's so much of that. I mean, all you got to do is open up Instagram. There's so much of meing, and that's happening. I am this and I am that. And we do it all the time. And it's okay. It's not a problem. That's the other piece. It's only a problem if we think it's a snake instead of just the reality, which is that, yes, there's this universal kind of no fixed and permanent anything. Yet I'm here and you're there. And there is distance between us, right? I've had different experiences, causes and conditions to create a certain way of being in the world, and so have you. But that doesn't mean that that's all that we are from the Buddhist perspective, right? So this is a path to peace, and it is meant to free our hearts, not keep us bound, not keep us, kind of confined. Yeah. It is an understanding of how we kind of put this all together, right? Or how we are put together. It's kind of an understanding of how we are put together and how we break apart. One of the aspects of the Buddhist teaching is to pay attention to the body at the point of death and after death. All the way to the point, depending on the tradition, of either the incineration of the body, which can happen like 7 days later, or In some practices, and this is kind of first foundation of mindfulness, it's death practice, where they go through the different stages of the decomposition of the body or the decay, all the way down to the bones turning into dust. Right. Of course, the short version is you set it on fire, and then, you know, which is an interesting practice. Yeah. So I want to go through the aggregates, and we'll just talk about them, and then I'll maybe give a few more examples, and then I'll open up for some questions. Actually, I mean, I guess, well, yeah, let me finish going through the aggregates, and then I'll open up for questions, because going through the aggregates might help. So the 5 kinds of stuff that make up the human experience from the Buddhist teaching. So the first is material form, right? The first aggregate is material form. All composite things, right? Matter, striker, bell, sound, material. Sound waves. Most people don't think of that. All are form, right? There's an egg is form, sperm is form, body is form, flower is form, earth is form, material form. Subject to change, right? Everything I mentioned, subject to change. Yes. All others are mental. So there's only that, the material form is the main aspect of, you know, the physicality of experience. All the rest are mental. Feeling tones, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, subtle, but a key driving force of craving and aversion, and big in our understanding of suffering. So this quality of every sense experience has anything that arises as pleasant or unpleasant, I want or I don't want. So this kind of feeling tone, and in the meditative practice, this recognition of feeling tone is when we have, like I think you were saying, the eye and what the eye sees are not different. True, but the eye and what the eye sees brings some type of a feeling tone. Subtle to very extreme, right? If you see something, you know, this is actually kind of what the death practice and the like decay and repulsiveness of the body practice is about. You know, like the eye sees repulsiveness and then feels that unpleasant experience, and then being able to kind of learn to be with this unpleasant experience, and you know, maybe have it become more neutral, right? This is part of sometimes what they actually call this is either distress tolerance or emotional regulation, right? The ability to, can I regulate my emotion, or can I be able to build some tolerance for the distressing realities of life? People that are psychologically, you could say, fragile or have some fragility to their stability are usually have a hard time in these areas. They don't have a lot of distress tolerance, and their inability to emotionally regulate is usually out of, you know, off balance. Right? So feeling tone, super important. And then so there's material form, eye sees, sight, and then there's the feeling tone, and then there's the perception. Right? What is perception? To see or recognize, seeing something or recognizing, labeling based on past experience, right? Seeing visual, light, form, color, shape, we interpret. We interpret like the snake. Oh, that's a snake. And then the body reacts. We're doing this all the time. We're constantly caught in our perceptions, particularly our perceptions of ourselves, right? So there was that piece where I was saying, 80% of your awareness kind of on breath, body, and then maybe 20% on the dropping of the question, right? So that was, really the idea is to then begin to stay with feeling tone and recognize what the felt experience could be versus kind of getting into our thoughts of things. But, we can't help it because we overemphasize our thinking as a species, right? Because we have the ability. And then we identify. So this is who I am. I once, I've told you guys this before, but I had a teacher, Robert Hall, who came out in the middle of a meditation retreat. It was like, 5 days into a 10-day meditation retreat. And he said, "Did you figure it out yet?" And I was thinking, absolutely not. Did you figure it out? You're not your thoughts. You're not your feelings. And it was like a moment of perception shift. Oh yeah, I've been wrestling, struggling, all these past thoughts that were like childhood and this happened and that happened, all these future thoughts about what I'm gonna do and what I'd rather do and what I wanna do. And then all of the kind of the emotion that was kind of coming up. Where is emotion? Emotion really isn't in the past and the future at all. Where is emotion? Only in the present moment. Yet we can pull up a memory and then attach an emotion to it and then re-experience it, right? And this is often the cause of suffering. So this kind of, you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings. We're not our emotions. They're arriving, they're passing away, they're impermanent, they're not you. And one of the other teachers of the same retreat said, and if you get caught up in thinking about, your thoughts as you, just start to imagine your thoughts as coming from the person behind you or next to you, just moving through. Just moving through, they move through one to the other, because we all have pretty similar thoughts. And if we start to actually share openly about what we think, there's some outliers. There's maybe, I don't know, 3% or something, maybe 5% of the population that they're very abnormal thinkers. I don't know, that could be good or not good. I don't know. Right. So the Buddha taught, and I'll open up with this, but the Buddha talked of the 4 ways of misperception. I was kind of alluding to this earlier, that we perceive or that we see permanence where there is impermanence. We see lasting happiness where there is unsatisfactoriness. And we see a self where there is not a self. And then we see beauty where there is not beauty. So don't rest in the labels. This is the theme of Beginner's Mind. Don't rest in labels. Just allow, can we just begin to experience each meditation, each day, new, different, instead of identifying with what I often call our perceptual database. What is our perceptual database? It's all the past experiences. So, thoughts, questions, reflections based on what I've shared so far. Please.
I am so curious about the death practice that you spoke of. And not that you have to explain it right now, but is there something like that we can get an explanation or process in another sit?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll give you the brief answer now, but yeah, it's so death, awareness of death practice, and there's several kind of practices around it, and part of this "Who am I" is leaning that direction, but it's part of what's called the first foundation of mindfulness. So it's from the Satipatthana Sutta. Satipatthana means mindfulness and foundations. Yeah, Satipatthana Sutta means and the first foundation is breath, body, and then through the awareness of body, the impermanence of this body, and then death, and then the taking understanding of the death practice. And so probably the best way to really look at that is through Stephen Levine's book, A Year to Live. I mean, Stephen Levine, Noah Levine's dad, he dedicated his whole life to who dies, to this practice of dying. So basically, and this is what some of us, especially particularly Western teachers do, is we have like one particular practice, and then, like that becomes the direction, and it's just the path, and it doesn't matter. Some people choose metta, loving kindness, and that's the path. And the interesting thing is all paths lead to the same place, which is release, freedom from suffering. So A Year to Live is a good book of like, take on the practice, kind of read through it, prepare. But I'll just further explain that in the first foundation of mindfulness, the awareness of the body, which then is also about looking at the parts. That what is this body, right, that we're so identified with? Head, hair, how does it go? Head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. That's like an awareness of this body practice, and the fact that head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, dead. It's all dead. And we're so constantly, wanting to beautify and keep vibrant, and there's some pretty interesting teachings where they're saying like it's like trying to keep this body kind of not just healthy, but trying to keep it beautified is like putting flowers on a corpse, like dressing up a corpse, which we do all the time, right? We're always dressing up corpses. Let's make them look more alive now that they're dead, and it's just part of the custom. It's part of the practice, So this kind of head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, and it goes on 32 parts of the body where you're kind of breaking down the pieces, is really leaning into this anatta practice. And part of the anatta practice is to see that if we take this body and we just think about it as its parts, then where do we identify with it? That's what the teaching is about. And then that's one piece. That's kind of what you do in that aspect practice, and then it extends to really like kind of going to charnel grounds, going to graveyards, attending funerals, showing up for death. And I was doing a walking meditation. It was in New Orleans one time a while ago, a few years back. And I was, they're famous for their above ground mausoleum, like amazing cemeteries. They really do death well in New Orleans, this kind of mix of culture, right? Where they have a procession and there's like party and bands and they wear masks and they're like, yeah, they do it. Let's celebrate this death. It's right up front. And then anyway, so I'm walking, I go to this one of the cemeteries, and I'm like, I'm going to go to this cemetery. I'm going to do some death. I was actually in a part of my practice, part of my training, where I was really contemplating this kind of death practice. And I'm doing walking meditation, and I found some tree. It was really hot. It was during the summer. But I found this tree. I was sitting underneath this tree, and I was doing walking meditation in this, in this cemetery, right? And I would, be stop, and I would look and see, 1947 to 1987, or whatever the person's name was, and I would walk a little more, and I was just really kind of trying to take it all in, and then also at the same time contemplating, I too will die one day. That's part of this practice. I too will die. This will happen to me. And then I went and I sat down like by this kind of mausoleum, and I was just kind of contemplating, my own death. And I stood up and I turned to look at I was like gonna like thank the person whose mausoleum I was by. It wasn't a real mausoleum, it was more like a gravestone that was a little bit raised. And it said Murphy, and that's my last name. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it was just a reality of, yeah, I too, this will happen. So that's some aspect of the death practice. Yeah. Which is part of the first foundation of mindfulness. Okay, others in the room or on Zoom? Thoughts, questions, reflections? Hopefully it didn't bum you guys out. Yeah, we're all gonna die.
Did you get through all 5 of the aggregates?
Good question, yeah. Did I?
Stopped at perception.
I did stop at perception, which is only the third. Glad that you're taking notes. Mental formations. Oh yeah, right. Well, let's keep going. Then I'll open up again. Yeah, because I was talking about the 4 ways of perception, misperception, right? And let me just read that again, because it's an interesting thing, right? The Buddha talked of 4 ways of misperception. And he actually also talked about mismeditating as well. Misperception and mismeditating. He would say, like, and we often talk about, you can't do this wrong. Yeah, if you're spacing out, you're not fucking meditating. You're spacing out, so that's one aspect, but that's a different talk. So these 4 ways, where we see permanence where there is impermanence. In other words, this is like that whole, I have a problem with change. I don't like change. That is suffering. I have a real problem with change. I used to say that all the time, and it was true. I pushed away change. I didn't want it to experience change because it was scary. This is why people have a hard time with impermanence, because it's scary. We see lasting happiness where there is unsatisfactoriness. This is delusional. Lasting happiness, this idea of like, I'm going to be happy forever. Not a reality. Now, the letting go of needing to have happiness all the time tends to bring some sense of satisfaction. Go figure. Right? We see self where there is not a self. This is the main theme of the day. And we see beauty where there is not beauty, which is how we got into the death talk, right? Head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. I want to invite you to do that as a practice. Head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. Head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. Feel it as you do it. Head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. This is the beginning of the 32 parts of the body meditation, which you can find, online if you wanted to do that. So, mental formation. So it goes material form was the first 3. Feeling tone, material form, perception. So this is, we identify with body, then we experience, we have some experience of our sense doors with other material. And then we have a feeling or feeling tone that arises, which then gives rise to perception, and perception gives rise to mental formation. What is mental? Sometimes it's called mental fabrication. Mental formation, thoughts, emotions, moods, states of mind, this generation of mind, the kind of generative quality, subtle qualities, mindfulness, rapture, concentration, heart practice. All these things are going through the mind. So it's not just the negative, right? It's just what does the mind produce? It produces mental formations based on the other 3. So then that leads to consciousness, right? What is consciousness? to know a bare quality of experience, right? We have there's some kind of broader kind of the consciousness, you know, and even from a psychological perspective, definitely the psychoanalytic perspective or the Jungian perspective, there's this kind of concept of collective consciousness, which I think is really going back to if you ever are just over-identified with your thoughts, think about that they're coming from somebody else. But that's kind of like saying collective consciousness. There's awareness, and then there's attention. Awareness, this consciousness from the Buddhist perspective is the reality of here and now. Consciousness is here. It's here. It's here. It's here. It's nowhere else. It's not something that we're reaching. It's something that we're recognizing. Oh, conscious awareness. It's a buzzword too, like people like to, you know, higher consciousness. Yeah. This is what we call insight. It's, can we be as conscious, as awake as possible in this present moment? So the experiential noticing, like nothing is just happening. You know, the sound and the knowing. There's the sound and the knowing. The knowing of experience, the sound, and the knowing of sound. The knowing of sound, we would call it ear consciousness, which really kind of it's bringing it all together. Because what's this? Material form, but we give it a name, right? What's the name? What's this? Bell, right? That could be a bell, could be a bowl, right? Depending. But bell, we'll just say, right? Material form, feeling tone, perception, consciousness, mental formation. Of course, we're doing this constantly. But why is this freeing? Why does this matter? Why does this matter? I want to read. I want to read this. This is, you know, direct kind of translation from the Buddhist teaching. The instructed disciple, that's us, people who are showing up for meditation, the instructed disciple of the noble ones does not regard material shape as self, or self as having material shape, or material shape as being in the self, or the self as being in the material shape. Nor does he or she regard feeling, perception, the impulses, or consciousness in any of these ways. They compromise each of these aggregates as it really is, that it is impermanent, suffering, not self, compounded, woeful. He does not approach them, grasp after them, or determine self for me, myself. And this, for a long time, conduces to his welfare and his happiness. So by not attaching to these aggregates, by not attaching to our mental formations, by not attaching to this is my consciousness, by not attaching to the perception, like, oh, this is the way I see the world, right? How much trouble does that get us into? My view is different than your view, and so your view is wrong. That's what's happening right now in Israel and Gaza. My view is different than your view. This is my land. No, this is my land. You know, I'm right. You're wrong. Every war. So when we're attaching to these perceptions, or when we're attaching to even the feeling tones, like I am this emotion, I am depression, I am anger, I am fear, I am, I don't know, love, even love, too much. attachment can be suffering. So one last, oh no, we're out of time. We're out of time, but maybe we'll talk more about this. I usually stay away from this topic because it seems complicated for people. But you guys, clearly, you guys are on it. You guys were not it wasn't complicated for you, right? And I think the main thing to think and remember is that it doesn't matter that much. Like sometimes, people get all caught up in it. No, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change. It doesn't change. The perception is what changes. But it doesn't change who you are. You are who you are. That's okay. But we can do what we can do in this present moment to shift our perception. And that's the hope. And that's what leads to insight. Any last thoughts or reflections before we end? All right. Okay. Well, we just stopped.